Welcome. Find yourself a comfortable position, perhaps adjusting your pillow just so. Tonight, we're going to step back in time, not to witness grand battles or political intrigue, but to observe something far more ordinary. We're going to spend a day, or rather several days, in a Victorian household, watching as the family laundry makes its slow journey from soiled linen to fresh folded cloth. There will be no hurrying here. The Victorians certainly didn't hurry their laundry, and neither shall we. We'll watch water heat slowly, we'll watch fabric soak gradually, we'll watch irons warm on the stove, patiently. This is the rhythm of household labour in the 19th century, and it moved at its own deliberate pace. So settle in, close your eyes if you wish, and let us begin on a Monday morning in 1875, in a modest but respectable home in the English countryside. The laundry doesn't truly begin on Monday morning. It begins the evening before, on Sunday, after the family has returned from church, after the cold supper has been cleared away, after the house has grown quiet. In the scullery, which is the small stone-floored room off the kitchen, the housemaid is gathering the soiled linens. She moves methodically through the house with her wicker basket. First, the bedchambers upstairs. The sheets are stripped from each bed, the pillowcases removed. The linens carry the faint scent of sleep and bodies, though in this respectable household, they are changed weekly, which is considered quite proper. She folds each sheet, not to keep it neat, but simply to fit it into the basket. There is no need for precision here. These items are heading for the washtub after all. The pillowcases she tucks in beside the sheets. Then she collects the towels from the washstand in each room. These towels are made of thick cotton, and they've absorbed water from the family's morning ablutions throughout the week. Down the narrow servants' stairs she goes, the basket growing heavier with each addition. In the dining room she retrieves the tablecloths. There are two of them, one from the daily meals, one from Sunday dinner. The Sunday cloth shows a small wine stain near one corner. She notes this mentally. That will need special attention. In the kitchen she adds the dish towels, several of them, well used and greyed with kitchen work. Cook has set them aside on a chair. Then the family's personal linens. These have been left in a designated basket outside each bedroom door. Undergarments, chemises, drawers, petticoats, the master's shirts with their detachable collars and cuffs. Each collar is kept separate, fastened with its collar stud. The Victorians were quite particular about this. Collars and cuffs, being the most visible and the most prone to dirt, were made detachable so they could be washed more frequently than the shirt itself. A gentleman might wear the same shirt for several days, but his collar would be changed daily. The maid counts the collars. 12, that seems right. The master wears 2 per day, changing at dinner time into a fresh one. 6 days, 12 collars. She places them in a separate, smaller basket. Now comes the sorting. This happens on the scullery floor, or if the weather is fine, in the yard. The maid creates several piles. One for the white linens, the sheets and pillowcases and towels. These are pure cotton or linen, and they can withstand vigorous washing. One for the coloureds, though there aren't many of these. A servant's dress, dark blue. A child's pinafore, pink gingham. These require gentler treatment. One pile for the heavily soiled items, the dish towels, the undergarments, kitchen aprons. These will need extra attention, perhaps even boiling. And one small pile for the delicates. The mistress's fine chemise with its lace trim, a silk necktie belonging to the master. These cannot be boiled or scrubbed with harsh soap. They will be washed separately, by hand, with gentle soap flakes. The sorting takes time, perhaps 20 minutes, perhaps 30. There is no clock in the scullery, and time here is measured not in minutes but in tasks completed. The maid works steadily, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, placing each item in its proper pile. When the sorting is finished, she fetches several large pails from the corner. These are wooden pails bound with iron hoops, heavy even when empty. She begins to fill them with cold water from the pump in the yard. The pump handle squeaks with each motion, up, down, up, down. Water gushes forth clear and cold. She fills each pail halfway. The white linens go into one pail, the coloureds into another, the heavily soiled items into a third. The delicates remain dry for now, draped over a chair. To each pail she adds a handful of washing soda, which is a white crystalline powder that softens the water and helps loosen dirt. She stirs it with a long wooden stick until it dissolves. The water becomes slightly cloudy, milky almost. Now the linens are pushed down into the water, submerged completely. This is called steeping. The items will soak overnight, giving the water and soda time to begin loosening the dirt. The maid ensures each piece is fully underwater, pressing down with her stick. Air bubbles rise to the surface as she works. The fabric is thirsty, drinking in the water. A thin cloth is laid over each pail to keep dust and insects out. The scullery window is left slightly open to let in the cool night air, and that is all for tonight. The maid wipes her hands on her apron, takes one last look at her preparations, and climbs the stairs to her small room in the attic, where she will sleep briefly before tomorrow's early start. Outside, the countryside is dark and quiet. Somewhere, an owl calls. The house settles into its nighttime creaking, and in the scullery the linen steep, slowly, patiently waiting for morning. Monday morning arrives not with fanfare, but with the quiet creak of floorboards as the maid rises in darkness. It is 4:30 in the morning. The household still sleeps, wrapped in those clean sheets that were put on the beds just yesterday, and will not be changed again for another week. The maid dresses quickly in the cold. Her room in the attic holds little warmth, even in summer, and on this autumn morning, her breath makes small clouds in the air. She pulls on her work dress, a plain cotton thing in dark blue already showing wear at the elbows. Over it goes a rough apron, on her feet sturdy boots. Her hair is pinned up hastily, covered with a cap. There is no mirror in her room, but she wouldn't consult it anyway. This is work clothing, not Sunday best. Down she goes through the sleeping house, her boots making soft sounds on the wooden stairs. The kitchen is dark. She lights a candle first, then works on getting the kitchen range going. A few pieces of kindling, some newspaper, a match. The fire catches, begins to spread. She adds coal, piece by piece, building the fire up slowly. The range will be needed today, though not for cooking. Well, not primarily for cooking. While the range warms, she goes to the scullery. The pails of steeping laundry sit where she left them, the water now quite dark from the released dirt. She doesn't disturb them yet. First, she must prepare the copper. The copper is a large, fixed tub built into the corner of the scullery, with a firebox underneath it. Some houses have their copper in a separate wash-house, but in this modest home, it shares space with the scullery. The copper itself is made of copper, hence the name, though some households have iron ones. This one holds perhaps 30 gallons when full. The maid checks the firebox beneath the copper. It's clean, the ashes having been removed the previous week after the last wash day. She lays a fire here much as she did in the kitchen range. Kindling first, then coal. She lights it and waits for it to catch. While she waits, she begins the long process of filling the copper. This is done bucket by bucket, carried from the pump in the yard. Each bucket holds perhaps 2 gallons. She will need 15 trips, maybe more. The pump is in the yard, perhaps 20 paces from the door. It's still dark, but the sky's beginning to lighten in the east, showing a thin line of grey. The pump handle is cold to the touch. She begins her work. Fill the bucket, carry it inside, pour it into the copper. Return to the yard. Fill the bucket, carry it inside, pour it into the copper. The rhythm of it is steady. Her arms will ache by the end of the day, but for now they're fresh. The water sloshes in the bucket as she walks. Some spills on the floor, but she pays it no mind. The floor will be wet all day anyway. 15 trips, 20 trips. The copper is now about 3/4 full, that will do. The water sits cold in the copper for now, but the fire beneath is beginning to warm it. This warming will take hours. Victorian washing required hot water, very hot water for the white linens. Not quite boiling, but close. And with a copper this size heated from below by coal fire, the warming is a slow process. She adds soap to the copper. Not the soap you might imagine, not a bar of hand soap. This is washing soap, a different thing entirely. In some households it's soft soap, a brownish jelly-like substance made from potash and animal fat. In this household they use hard soap, but it's been shaved into flakes with a knife. The maid adds several handfuls of these flakes. They float on the surface of the water for a moment before beginning to dissolve. She also adds more washing soda, perhaps half a cup. This will help soften the water and boost the cleaning power of the soap. She gives it all a stir with her long wooden stick called a dolly stick, though some call it a posser or a ponch. The water in the copper will take perhaps 2 hours to heat properly. It's now 5 o'clock in the morning. By 7 the water should be ready. In the meantime, there is other work to do. She returns to the pails of steeping laundry. The white linens have been soaking for perhaps 8 hours now. She pulls one sheet from its pail, letting the grey water drip back into the pail. The sheet is heavy with water. She carries it to a large tub, also in the scullery, and begins to rinse it with fresh cold water from another bucket. This first rinse is just to remove the loosest dirt, the dirt that the steeping has freed. The water that runs from the sheet is quite grey. She squeezes and rinses, working her way through each item in the white linen's pail. The sheets, the pillowcases, the towels. Each one is rinsed and then laid aside in a different basket ready for the copper. The sky outside is lighter now. Perhaps 6 o'clock. The household is beginning to stir. She can hear footsteps overhead, the creak of beds, the quiet voices of the family waking. Soon the mistress will want her morning tea, and the maid will have to pause in her laundry work to carry a tray upstairs. But for now, she continues with her preparations. She checks the copper. The water is warm now, quite warm though not yet hot enough. She adds more coal to the firebox, building up the heat. Smoke rises from the firebox, escapes through a flue built into the wall. The scullery is beginning to fill with the smell of hot water, soap and coal smoke. It's not an unpleasant smell particularly. It's the smell of wash day, familiar and expected. By 7 o'clock the water in the copper is steaming. Small wisps of vapour rise from the surface. The maid tests it with her hand, dipping her fingers in quickly. It's too hot to be comfortable, but not hot enough to scald. This is the correct temperature. She begins to add the white linens to the copper, one piece at a time. The sheets go in first, pushed down with the dolly stick. They float for a moment before becoming waterlogged and sinking. Then the pillowcases, the towels, a tablecloth. She doesn't overfill the copper. The items need room to move in the water, to be agitated. She adds perhaps half the white linens, keeping the rest for a second batch. Now begins the washing proper. She takes her dolly stick and begins to move the linens around in the hot soapy water. The dolly stick is a long wooden pole with a handle at the top and, at the bottom, a kind of flat perforated cone. By plunging it up and down, she forces water through the fabric, helping to loosen and remove dirt. The motion is rhythmic. Plunge down, pull up, plunge down, pull up. The water churns, the linens circulate. She works steadily, without hurrying. There is no benefit to rushing. The cleaning happens gradually, as the hot water and soap and agitation work together. She will do this for perhaps 20 minutes, perhaps 30. Her arms move in a steady rhythm. The scullery is warm now from the fire under the copper and the steam rising from the hot water. Despite the open window, the air is thick and damp. Small beads of sweat form on the maid's forehead. She wipes them away with the back of her hand, then returns to her work. Plunge down, pull up, plunge down, pull up. The linens swirl in the water, white shapes moving beneath the surface like strange pale fish. Time passes slowly on wash day. The clock in the kitchen ticks, but the maid rarely looks at it. Her day is measured not in hours but in stages. The washing stage, the rinsing stage, the wringing stage, the drying stage. Each has its own rhythm, its own duration. The first batch of white linens has been in the copper for perhaps 40 minutes now, being agitated regularly with the dolly stick. The water, which was clear and soapy when the linens went in, is now distinctly grey. The dirt has been drawn out of the fabric and suspended in the water. This is good. This is the purpose. Now comes the lifting out. This is harder than it sounds. The linens are sodden, heavy with hot water. Each sheet might weigh 20 pounds when wet. The maid uses the dolly stick to fish out one end of a sheet, then grasps it with her hands. The water is hot, uncomfortably so, but she's used to it. Her hands are already red and raw from the work, and they'll only get worse as the day goes on. She lifts the sheet from the copper, letting the excess water drain back in. The sheet steams in the cool morning air. She carries it to another large tub, this one filled with cold, clean water for rinsing. The sheet goes in with a splash, immediately cooling. One by one, the items from the first batch are removed from the copper and placed in the rinsing tub. When the copper is empty, she looks at the water remaining in it. It's quite grey now, filled with the dirt from the first batch. But it's still hot, and hot water is precious, so she doesn't throw it away. Instead, she'll use this water for a second batch of less important items. Before adding more linens, though, she uses a large ladle to scoop out some of the dirty water, replacing it with fresh, hot water from a kettle she's kept heating on the kitchen range. This refreshes the water somewhat. She adds more soap flakes, more washing soda. She stirs it all together. The second batch goes in. More sheets, another tablecloth, the dish towels. These dish towels are particularly stained, showing the marks of kitchen work. Grease, food stains, the general grime of daily use, they'll need extra attention. For these heavily soiled items, the maid uses a different technique. After they've soaked in the copper for a while, she takes them out one at a time and places them on a wooden board, also in the scullery. This is called a washboard, though it's not the corrugated kind you might picture. It's simply a flat wooden surface. She lays a dish towel on the board, then rubs soap directly onto the stains. Hard soap this time, not flakes. She scrubs at the stains with a brush, a stiff bristled thing that makes harsh sounds against the fabric. Back and forth, back and forth. The soap forms a lather. The stains begin, slowly, to fade. This is hard work. The scrubbing requires force. The maid leans into it, using her body weight. Her arms ache. Her back aches. But the stains are stubborn, and only this combination of hot water, strong soap, and vigorous scrubbing will remove them. One dish towel takes perhaps 10 minutes of scrubbing. There are 7 dish towels in this batch. She works through them methodically, one after another. When a towel has been scrubbed sufficiently, it goes back into the copper to soak some more in the hot, soapy water. While the second batch continues to wash in the copper, the maid turns her attention to the items in the rinsing tub. These are the sheets and towels from the first batch, now soaking in cold water to remove the soap. Rinsing is almost as laborious as washing. Each item must be rinsed thoroughly until no trace of soap remains. Soap left in fabric will make it feel stiff and uncomfortable when dry, and it can also cause yellowing over time, so the rinsing must be thorough. She pulls a sheet from the rinsing tub, lifts it, lets the water run off. She inspects it. Are there any soap suds visible? She squeezes the fabric. Does soapy water come out? If so, it needs more rinsing. She works the sheet in the water, squeezing and releasing, squeezing and releasing. This helps force out the soap. Then she lifts it again, examines it again. Better, but perhaps not quite there yet. She empties the rinsing tub, which is now filled with soapy water from the sheets, and refills it with fresh cold water. This requires more trips to the pump in the yard. 4 trips, 5 trips. The tub is refilled, the sheet goes back in. This process, washing and rinsing, happens in a kind of rotation. The second batch finishes washing in the copper and is moved to the rinsing stage. A third batch goes into the copper. Items that have been rinsed once are rinsed again, in even cleaner water. Items that have been rinsed twice are finally considered clean and ready for the next stage, wringing. By now it's perhaps 10 o'clock in the morning. The maid has been working for more than 5 hours. Her back aches. Her hands are red and chapped from the hot water and harsh soap. Her dress is soaked. Her apron sodden. But the washing is progressing. Slowly, steadily, the pile of clean, rinsed items grows, ready for wringing. The kitchen has its own demands too. She's had to pause several times to serve breakfast, to clear the breakfast dishes, to prepare tea. The family doesn't stop needing attention just because it's wash day, but wash day is her priority today, and the mistress understands this. The meals are simpler on Mondays. Cold meat from Sunday's roast, bread, butter, tea. Nothing that requires much cooking. In the scullery, the copper steams, the rinsing tub sloshes with clean water, and the pile of waiting laundry slowly diminishes as piece by piece, item by item, the washing is done. The rinsed laundry sits in a heavy, wet heap. Each sheet, each towel, each item is sodden with water, so heavy that lifting even a single sheet requires effort. But this water must be removed before the items can be dried. This brings us to one of the most challenging parts of wash day, wringing. In wealthier households there might be a mangle, a device with 2 heavy wooden rollers that press water from fabric. But in this modest home, there is no such luxury. The wringing is done by hand, a task that will take considerable time and strength. The maid takes a sheet from the rinsed pile. She twists one end tightly, then the other, working toward the middle. Water pours from the fabric in a stream, splashing onto the flagstone floor. Her hands grip the wet fabric tightly. She twists harder, wringing out as much water as possible. The muscles in her forearms strain. Her shoulders ache from the effort. When she can wring no more water from it, she holds the sheet up to examine it. It's still damp, of course, quite damp but no longer dripping. This is as dry as hand-wringing can achieve. She folds it loosely and places it in yet another basket, this one designated for items ready to hang. 1 sheet done, 9 more to go, along with all the other linens. She takes the next sheet. Twist, wring, squeeze. Water streams onto the floor. The floor is now quite wet, a thin sheet of water covering the flagstones. She'll have to mop later, but for now, it doesn't matter. The water will find its way to the drain in the corner slowly. For the smaller items, the process is quicker but still requires effort. A towel can be wrung more easily than a sheet, simply because there's less of it to manage. But there are many towels, and pillowcases, and dish towels. Each one must be wrung dry, or as dry as possible. The repetitive motion is meditative in its way. Wring, squeeze, fold, place in basket. Wring, squeeze, fold, place in basket. The maid's hands move automatically, her mind perhaps wandering to other things. What needs doing tomorrow? The potatoes need peeling for dinner. The front step needs scrubbing. The brass needs polishing. But mostly her mind is quiet, focused only on the immediate task. There's something to be said for work that occupies the hands but leaves the mind free to drift. Not all work is like this. Some requires constant attention, constant decision-making. But wringing laundry is straightforward. Wring it. Don't drop it. Put it in the basket. Repeat. An hour passes, perhaps more. It's nearing noon now. The maid has been working since 4:30 this morning, with only brief pauses. Her hands are pruned from the water, wrinkled and pale. Her back aches from bending over the rinsing tub. But the pile of wrung laundry grows steadily. Now we come to the coloureds, those items that couldn't be boiled in the copper. A servant's dress, a child's pinafore, a few cotton handkerchiefs with coloured embroidery. These have been washed more gently in warm rather than hot water with milder soap. The process is otherwise the same. Wash, rinse, rinse again, wring. The dress in particular requires care. It's made of a fabric that might run if treated roughly. The colour, a deep blue, could bleed into the water, leaving the dress faded. So the washing has been gentle, the rinsing brief. The maid wrings it carefully, not twisting it as violently as she did the sheets. And then there are the delicates. The mistress's fine chemise, the master's silk necktie. These have been hand-washed separately in a basin with soap flakes, gently agitated, carefully rinsed. The maid doesn't wring these items at all. Instead, she rolls them in a dry towel, pressing to absorb the water. This is less effective than wringing, but it preserves the delicate fabric. By early afternoon, all the washing is done. Every item that was collected Sunday evening has now been washed, rinsed and wrung. The baskets of clean laundry sit in the scullery, waiting for the next stage. Outside, if the weather is fine, the clothesline waits, and if the weather is poor, well, there are drying racks that can be set up indoors, though the drying will take much longer. Today, fortune smiles. The weather is clear, with a light breeze. Perfect drying weather. The maid gathers a basket of the clean laundry and heads out to the yard. The yard behind the house is modest but adequate. There's a small vegetable garden, a path, and, strung between two posts, the clothesline. It's made of hemp rope, thick and rough to the touch. Over years of use, it's become worn smooth in places where the pegs rest. The maid sets her basket down on the grass, which is still slightly damp with morning dew, though the sun has been working on it for hours now. She's brought with her a smaller basket containing clothes pegs, wooden ones, simple in design, just 2 pieces of wood held together with a metal spring. These pegs will hold the laundry to the line. She begins with the sheets. A sheet is heavy, even after wringing, and hanging it requires a certain technique. She drapes the sheet over the line, letting it hang double. This uses less line space and means one item takes up less room. She fastens it with several pegs spaced along the line. The sheet hangs limply at first, but as a breeze comes through, it billows out, filling with air. The white fabric is bright in the sunlight, almost glowing. There's something satisfying about seeing clean laundry hanging in the sun. It's a visible sign of work done, of household management, of respectability. Another sheet goes up, and another. The line fills quickly. There's only so much line, and this household generates more laundry than one line can accommodate when everything needs drying at once. But the maid has anticipated this. There's a second line strung across another part of the yard, and beyond that, wooden drying racks that can be set up if needed. The pillowcases go up next, pegged to the line in a row, then the towels. Each item is shaken out before hanging to remove any wrinkles and to help it dry more evenly. Shake, hang, peg, shake, hang, peg. The rhythm of this work is different from the usual chores. This is outdoor work, with fresh air and sunlight. The maid's hands are starting to dry from the dampness of the morning. The breeze is refreshing after the warm, humid atmosphere of the kitchen. She moves through the baskets, hanging up the tablecloths first, then the dish towels. The coloured linens are placed on a separate part of the line, away from the whites, though this is more out of habit than necessity now. They're clean and won't cause any issues. For the smaller items, the handkerchiefs and such, she uses a drying rack indoors. These small things could blow away if left outside, or could be missed when it's time to gather everything in. Better to dry them inside on the rack near the kitchen range, where they'll dry quickly in the warmth. The delicates also stay indoors. The mistress's chemise is laid flat on a clean towel on the spare bed in the maid's room. It will dry there slowly, without any stress on the delicate fabric or lace. The silk necktie is hung over a chair back, smoothed carefully with the maid's hand. By mid-afternoon, all the laundry is hanging or laid out to dry. The clotheslines in the yard are full, white sheets and linens waving gently in the breeze. Inside, the racks hold smaller items. The scullery, so full of activity all morning, is now quiet. The copper has been emptied, the dirty water poured out in the yard, far from the vegetable garden. The tubs have been scrubbed and stacked. The floor has been mopped, though it's still damp and will take time to dry. The maid allows herself a brief rest. She sits on the step outside the kitchen door, a cup of tea in her hands. It's now perhaps 3 o'clock. She's been working for more than 10 hours, with only brief pauses for the family's meals. Her body aches everywhere. Her hands are raw. But the worst is over. Now it's simply a matter of waiting for the laundry to dry. The drying time depends on the weather. On a fine, breezy day like this, the sheets might be dry in 3 or 4 hours. The smaller items, the towels and dish towels, might be dry sooner. The mistress's chemise, laid flat indoors, might take until tomorrow. There's no rushing this part. The sun and wind do their work at their own pace. The maid will check the laundry periodically, feeling the fabric to test its dryness. Items that dry first will be brought in and folded, making room on the line for any second load items or for the laundry from other days if needed. But for now, in the afternoon sun, the laundry hangs and dries. The white fabric gleams, the breeze moves through the yard, and somewhere in the distance a bird sings. The afternoon wears on. The sun tracks across the sky, and the shadows in the yard grow longer. The maid goes about her other duties. There's the family's tea to prepare and serve. There's the dinner to start, though the mistress has planned a simple meal today, understanding the demands of wash day. Cold meat, boiled potatoes, bread, butter, perhaps a simple pudding. But every hour or so the maid steps out into the yard to check the laundry. She runs her hand over a sheet, feeling its dampness, still wet in places, particularly along the seam where it's folded over the line. She leaves it for now. An hour later she checks again. The smaller items, the towels and dish towels, are nearly dry. She unpins them from the line, shakes them out, and carries them inside to the scullery table, where they'll await the next stage, pressing. The sheets take longer. Their sheer size means more fabric to dry. Even with the steady breeze, the thicker parts where the fabric is doubled over remain damp. But by early evening, perhaps 6 o'clock, they too are dry enough to bring in. She unpins them one at a time, folds them loosely, stacks them in her basket. The clothespins go back in their own basket for next week's use. The now empty clothesline hangs slack in the evening air, swaying slightly in the breeze. Inside, the scullery table is covered with folded laundry. Not neatly folded, not yet. Just folded enough to fit in baskets to be manageable. The neat folding will come after the pressing. Ah yes, the pressing. Because wash day isn't complete when the laundry is clean and dry. Victorian households valued crisp, smooth linens. Wrinkled sheets were a sign of poor household management. So everything, or nearly everything, must be pressed with irons. But pressing doesn't happen on Monday. By the time the laundry's gathered in on Monday evening, it's late, and the maid is exhausted. The pressing will wait until Tuesday. This is the standard arrangement in most households, washing Monday, ironing Tuesday. For now, the clean, dry laundry is stacked in baskets in the scullery. The items that don't need pressing, the dish towels for instance, are folded properly and put away in their drawer in the kitchen. The master's collars and cuffs, which will need careful pressing with starch, are set aside in their own basket. The items that need pressing but aren't urgently needed are left in baskets, waiting for tomorrow. The sheets will be pressed, as will the tablecloths, the best towels, the pillowcases. The family's undergarments will be pressed. Even simple pressing just to remove wrinkles makes a difference in the overall presentation of the household. As evening falls, the maid finishes her duties. The family's dinner is served and cleared, the dishes are washed, the kitchen is tidied, and finally, she can rest. But even as she climbs the stairs to her small room in the attic, she's thinking ahead to tomorrow. The irons will need heating, the starch will need mixing, the pressing board will need setting up. Tuesday will be another long day of work, though perhaps not quite as exhausting as Monday's washing. For now, though, sleep. Deep, dreamless sleep earned through 14 hours of physical labour. Tuesday arrives more gently than Monday. The maid rises at 5:30, a full hour later than yesterday. There's still much work to do, but the pressing, while tedious, is less physically demanding than the washing. Still, it will take all day. She dresses, descends to the kitchen, lights the range. The kitchen range will be crucial today, as it's where the irons will be heated. In some households, there's a special iron stove just for this purpose. But again, this modest home has no such luxury. The kitchen range will serve. While the range heats, the maid prepares breakfast for the family. This is simpler on Tuesday mornings. Porridge, perhaps, with milk and sugar. Toast. Tea. The mistress doesn't expect elaborate meals while the maid is consumed with laundry tasks. After breakfast is cleared away, the maid sets up her pressing station. This consists of a wide board, padded with an old blanket and covered with a clean sheet. The board is placed across 2 chairs in the kitchen, creating a flat, elevated surface for pressing. Next, she sets out her irons. There are 3 of them, heavy flat irons made of cast iron. Each one weighs perhaps 6 pounds. They have smooth, flat bottoms and removable handles. The handles are made of wood and attached to the irons with a clasp, which allows one handle to be moved between irons. She places all 3 irons on the top of the kitchen range to heat. They'll need to be quite hot enough that a drop of water sizzles and evaporates immediately when it touches the surface, but not so hot that they scorch the fabric. Judging the correct temperature is a skill learned through experience. While the irons heat, perhaps 20 minutes or half an hour, the maid prepares her other supplies: a bowl of clean water and a cloth for dampening fabric, a tin of starch for items that need it, the basket of clean laundry from yesterday. And here's where we should talk about starch. In Victorian households, certain items were starched to give them body and crispness. The master's collars and cuffs, definitely. Tablecloths, usually. Sometimes the best bedsheets, though not always. The starch was made from potato or cornstarch mixed with water to create a thin, milky liquid. The maid measures starch powder into a bowl, adds water, stirs until smooth. She tests the consistency by dipping her finger in. It should be slightly thick, like thin cream. Too thick and it will leave residue on the fabric. Too thin and it won't have any effect. The items that need starching are dipped in this liquid, or the liquid is applied with a brush. Then they're allowed to dry slightly until they're damp but not wet. This is called damp dry. Pressing starch-soaked fabric when it's damp sets the starch into the fibres, making them stiff and crisp. By now the irons are hot. The maid tests one by holding her hand near it. She can feel the heat radiating from it. She takes a small scrap of cloth and touches it to the iron. It doesn't scorch, which is good. The iron is ready. She attaches the wooden handle to one of the hot irons, carefully using a cloth to protect her hand. She lifts it from the stove. It's heavy, and the heat from it warms her hand even through the wooden handle. She carries it to the pressing board and sets it down, like now the pressing can begin. Pressing. She begins with a simple item, a towel. It doesn't need starching, just smoothing. She lays the towel flat on the padded board, smoothing it with her hands first to remove any obvious wrinkles. Then she picks up the hot iron and begins to press. The motion is steady. She presses the iron down onto the fabric, applies pressure, lifts it, moves to the next section. Not sliding the iron, as you might do with a modern iron, but pressing down, lifting, moving. This technique is less likely to create new wrinkles. The towel is cotton, thick and sturdy. It can handle heat. The iron moves across it, and where the iron has been, the fabric is smooth and flat. The heat drives out any remaining moisture and sets the fibres in their smooth position. When the towel is done, she folds it neatly and sets it aside. One item done, many more to go. Next, a pillowcase. Same technique. Lay flat, press, lift, move. The pillowcase has embroidery on it, small flowers stitched by the mistress or perhaps her mother. The maid is careful around the embroidery, not pressing too hard lest she flatten the stitching. By now, the first iron is beginning to cool. She can tell because it's not gliding quite as smoothly over the fabric. She sets it aside and picks up the second hot iron from the stove. This rotation of irons is necessary. An iron cools as it works, and a cool iron is useless for pressing. By having 3 irons heating while she works with one, she can maintain a steady workflow. The first iron goes back on the stove to reheat. The second iron continues the work. Press, lift, move. Press, lift, move. A tablecloth now. This is a larger item and it takes time to press the entire surface. She works methodically, section by section. The tablecloth is linen and linen presses beautifully when damp. She sprinkles a few drops of water on particularly stubborn wrinkles before pressing over them. The water turns to steam under the heat of the iron, relaxing the fibres. The pressing creates a rhythm much like the wringing did yesterday. It's repetitive work that allows the mind to wander. The kitchen is quiet except for the occasional hiss of the iron on damp fabric. The scent of hot cotton and linen fills the air. It's not unpleasant. In fact, there's something comforting about it. The smell of clean household linens being made even cleaner, crisper, more perfect. Now we come to the items that need starch, the master's collars and cuffs. These have been dipped in the starch solution and are now damp dry, ready for pressing. The maid takes extra care with these. Collars and cuffs are highly visible, and any imperfection will be noticed immediately. She lays a collar on the board, smoothing it carefully. The starch has made the fabric slightly stiff already, but the pressing will set it completely. She uses a very hot iron for this, one that she's kept on the hottest part of the range. She presses firmly, holding the iron in place for several seconds to allow the heat to penetrate the starched fabric thoroughly. When she lifts the iron, the collar is stiff and smooth, standing almost upright on the board. Perfect. Each collar gets this treatment. There are 12 of them, one for each day of the week, twice daily. She works through them methodically. Then the cuffs, of which there are even more, as each shirt has 2 cuffs. The pressing of starched items is particularly satisfying. The transformation is so visible. The collar goes from limp and slightly damp to crisp and smooth. It's a small thing, a collar, but it matters. The master's appearance matters, and these collars are an important part of that appearance. Mid-morning arrives. The maid pauses to serve the family their mid-morning tea, then returns to her pressing. The pile of unpressed laundry slowly diminishes. The pile of pressed folded laundry grows. The sheets are next. These are large items requiring considerable effort to press. She folds each sheet in half lengthwise, then in half again, creating a long, narrow rectangle that's more manageable. She presses this folded sheet, working her way along its length. Then she unfolds it part way and refolds it differently, pressing the sections that were folded inside. It's a bit like origami, this folding and unfolding and refolding to ensure every part of the sheet gets pressed. It takes perhaps 20 minutes to press one sheet properly. There are 10 sheets in total. The maid settles in for a long morning. The second iron cools. She switches to the third. The second goes back on the range. The third iron continues the work. Press, lift, move. Press, lift, move. By early afternoon, the maid has been pressing for nearly 5 hours. Her arm aches from lifting and moving the heavy irons. Her back aches from leaning over the pressing board, but the end is in sight. The pile of unpressed laundry is much smaller now. The family's undergarments need pressing. These aren't starched, but they do need to be smooth. The mistress's chemise, now completely dry from its careful flat drying, is pressed gently with a cooler iron. The delicate lace trim requires special attention. The maid uses just the tip of the iron, barely touching the lace, just enough to smooth it without crushing it. The master's undergarments are pressed more firmly. They're made of sturdy cotton, and they can handle a hot iron. Each item is pressed, folded neatly, and added to the pile. The children's clothes are next if there are children in the household. Small dresses, small shirts, small undergarments. These go quickly because they're small, requiring less time to press than adult-sized items. The coloureds, the servant's dress and the child's pinafore are pressed with care to avoid any shine. Shiny patches on fabric are a sign of overpressing or an iron that's too hot. For darker fabrics especially, this is a concern. The maid uses a pressing cloth, a thin cotton cloth laid between the iron and the garment, to protect the fabric and prevent shine. By mid-afternoon, perhaps 3 o'clock, the pressing is nearly done. The last few items are towels and dish towels, simple things that don't require much attention. She presses them quickly, folds them, stacks them, and then, finally, the last item is pressed. The maid stands back and surveys her work. The pressing board is empty. The range holds 3 cooling irons, and on the kitchen table, neatly folded and stacked, is all the household laundry, clean, dry and pressed. Now comes the final stage, putting it all away. The sheets go upstairs to the linen cupboard, a tall wooden cupboard in the upstairs hallway. She places them on the shelf, the newest pressed sheets at the bottom of the stack, the older ones on top. This rotation ensures that all the sheets get used evenly, preventing any single set from wearing out prematurely while others remain pristine. The towels go in the linen cupboard as well, on a different shelf. The tablecloths, carefully folded with as few creases as possible, go in a drawer in the dining room sideboard. The master's collars and cuffs go in his dressing room, arranged in a special box designed to keep them flat and protected. The mistress's chemise goes in her bureau drawer. The family's other undergarments are distributed to the appropriate bedrooms, placed in the appropriate drawers. The dish towels go back to the kitchen, in their drawer near the sink. The servants' clothing goes to the servants' rooms. Everything has its place. Everything is put away. The household is once again supplied with clean linens, and it will remain so for another week when the whole process will begin again. It's now late afternoon on Tuesday. The maid has finished all the laundry work. It has taken in total parts of 3 days. Sunday evening for preparation, all day Monday for washing, and all day Tuesday for pressing. This is 30 or more hours of focused labour, dedicated entirely to the task of keeping the household's linens clean. And this was every week after week after week. The laundry was never done, not really. As soon as 1 week's washing was finished and put away, the family was already using fresh linens, which would become soiled and need washing again the following week. Consider what this meant for the household servant. Monday and Tuesday of every week, consumed entirely by laundry. That's 2 days out of every 7, more than a quarter of her working life, spent on this one task. Of course, she had other duties on those days. The family still needed feeding, the house still needed basic tidying, but laundry was the priority, the task around which everything else had to fit. There was no washing machine to do the work, no dryer to speed the drying, no permanent press fabrics that didn't need ironing. Every step was manual labour. Carrying water, heating water, stirring laundry in hot soapy water, wringing, hanging, waiting, gathering in, pressing with heavy irons. And it wasn't just physically exhausting, it was mentally draining in its own way. The repetitiveness of it, the never-ending nature of it, the pressure to do it right, because the state of the household linens reflected on the respectability of the family and, by extension, on the competence of the servant. A well-run Victorian household had crisp white linens, soft clean towels, smooth tablecloths, stiff collars. These were signs of good household management, of respectability, of proper place in society. So the maid took pride in her work, even as it exhausted her. When she saw those clean sheets on the clothesline, bright white in the sunshine, she felt satisfaction. When she pressed those collars to crisp perfection, she knew she was doing her job well. When the mistress examined a tablecloth and found it spotless and smooth, the maid felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. But it was hard work. Make no mistake about that. By Tuesday evening, the maid was completely spent. Her hands were raw from the water and soap. Her arms ached from wringing and pressing. Her back hurt from bending over tubs and pressing boards. She was exhausted in a deep, bone-tired way that only physical labour can produce. And yet there was no lying in on Wednesday morning. Wednesday brought its own tasks. The house needed cleaning. Floors needed scrubbing. Brass needed polishing. Windows needed washing. The rhythm of household work continued day after day, week after week. Let us step back even further and consider the broader context of Victorian laundry. What we've described is the weekly wash of a modest but respectable household, one that could afford to employ a single maid. But laundry looked different in different households. In the homes of the very wealthy, the washing might be sent out to a professional laundress. This woman, often working from her own home, would collect soiled linens from several households, wash them all together or in sequence, and return them clean and pressed. She made her living this way, washing from dawn to dusk every day except Sunday. Or, in a large wealthy household, there might be a dedicated laundry maid whose only job was the washing. She wouldn't serve meals or clean rooms, She just did laundry all week long, because the volume of linens in a large household with many family members and servants was such that it required constant attention. In poorer households, the washing was still done by hand, but with even fewer resources. Perhaps no copper for boiling, just cold or lukewarm water. Perhaps no soap flakes, just a small piece of hard soap that had to last for weeks. Perhaps no proper clothesline, just ropes strung between buildings or laundry draped over bushes to dry. And in the very poorest households, cleanliness was a luxury that was difficult to maintain. Washing required water, which might need to be carried from a communal pump blocks away. It required soap, which cost money. It required fuel to heat water, which also cost money. It required time, which for a woman working in a factory or taking in piecework was a precious commodity. So clean linens were not just a matter of effort. They were also a matter of resources, of social class, of what one could afford in terms of time, water, soap and fuel. The Victorians were very conscious of this. They could read social status in laundry. A gentleman's crisp white collar proclaimed his respectability. A woman's clean apron showed her to be a proper housewife. Children in clean clothes were children from good families. Servants in clean uniforms reflected well on their employers. Conversely, soiled or wrinkled clothing was a mark of poverty or poor character. Never mind that the poor often lacked the resources to maintain clean clothes. The judgment was made nonetheless. Cleanliness, the Victorians believed, was next to godliness, and clean laundry was a visible expression of that cleanliness. The amount of water required for laundry was substantial. In our example household, the maid made dozens of trips to the pump in the yard. Each trip brought perhaps 2 gallons of water. Over the course of wash day, she might carry 50 gallons or more. 50 gallons of water, weighing more than 400 pounds in total, carried bucket by bucket. In houses without a yard pump, the water might come from a communal pump in the street, or even from a well some distance away. The labour of fetching water was in itself a significant part of the work of washing, and the soap? The harsh washing soap made from animal fat and lye was hard on fabric and hard on hands. The maid's raw, chapped hands were an occupational hazard of wash day, week after week of exposure to this strong soap and hot water. The fuel for heating water was another cost. Coal for the copper, coal for the range to heat the irons. In a working-class household where every penny mattered, the coal for wash day was a significant expense. So when we look at those clean, white sheets hanging on the line, or that stack of pressed linen in the cupboard, we should see not just cleanliness, but labour. Hours and hours of human labour. The bent back of the maid, her raw hands, her aching arms, the water she carried, the fire she tended, the wringing, the hanging, the pressing. Clean laundry was not, in the Victorian era, the simple matter it is today. It was a significant undertaking, a major household task, and the people who performed that task, mostly women, deserve recognition for their work. Of course, laundry hasn't always been done this way, and it isn't done this way anymore. The methods we've described were specific to a particular time and place, Britain in the Victorian era, roughly the latter half of the 19th century. Before the Victorian era, laundry was even more labour-intensive in some ways. In medieval times, for instance, laundry might be done only a few times a year, not weekly. Linens would be worn until quite soiled, then washed all at once in a major undertaking. Sometimes laundry was taken to a stream or river, where it could be beaten against rocks and rinsed in flowing water. The development of fixed coppers for boiling laundry was an improvement, as was the availability of manufactured soap. In earlier times, soap might be made at home, a process that involved saving animal fat and wood ashes and considerable effort. By the late Victorian era, some advances were beginning to appear. The mangle, those 2 rollers that squeezed water from fabric, became more common. It was still operated by hand, with a crank, but it was far more effective at removing water than wringing by hand. In the very late 1800s and early 1900s, mechanical washing machines began to appear. These early machines were still manual. They didn't run on electricity. Instead, they were operated by hand cranks or foot treadles. But they did agitate the laundry mechanically, which was less tiring than using a dolly stick. Electric washing machines came later, in the early 20th century. But even these early electric machines were quite different from modern ones. They might heat the water, and they might agitate the clothes, but they didn't rinse or spin. Those steps still had to be done by hand, or with a separate machine. The fully automatic washing machine, the kind that washes, rinses and spins in one cycle, without any human intervention beyond loading it and pressing a button, didn't become common until the 1950s or 1960s, and electric or gas dryers, which eliminated the need for hanging laundry on lines, came around the same time. So for most of human history, laundry was hard, manual labour. The Victorian wash day that we've been describing was actually relatively advanced for its time, with its copper for boiling water and its manufactured soap. But it was still demanding work. Today, of course, doing laundry is barely work at all. Load the machine, add detergent, press a button, wait. Transfer to the dryer, press another button, wait, fold. Most of the work is simply waiting for machines to do their job. Some items still need ironing, though far fewer than in Victorian times. Modern fabrics are often designed to be wrinkle-resistant, and even items that do need ironing can be pressed with a modern steam iron in a fraction of the time it took with flat irons. The labour has been removed from laundry, replaced by machines and technology. This is undoubtedly a good thing, but it's worth remembering occasionally what laundry used to involve: the hours of work, the physical toll, the skill and care required. When you pull clean clothes from your dryer, soft and warm and perfectly dry, spare a thought for the Victorian maid who spent 2 full days every week achieving similar results with only her own strength, hot water, soap, and determination. Wednesday morning dawns, and the maid rises at her usual time. Her body aches from the previous 2 days of work, but there's no respite. Today brings its own tasks. However, there is one small pleasure. When she goes to make the beds, she pulls fresh sheets from the linen cupboard. These are the sheets she washed just 2 days ago. They smell of sunshine and fresh air. They're smooth and crisp from her careful pressing. She strips the beds, which were made up just a week ago with last week's fresh sheets. Those sheets go into the laundry basket in the scullery. Next Monday they'll be washed, and so the cycle continues. She makes up the beds with the fresh sheets, tucking them in neatly, smoothing out any wrinkles. The beds look inviting now, ready for another week of use. In the kitchen she uses a clean dish towel from yesterday's pressing. It's thick and absorbent, perfect for drying the dishes. In the dining room, if the family is having a formal meal, a fresh tablecloth will be laid, crisp and white. The master appears for breakfast in a clean shirt with a fresh collar, stiff and perfect from yesterday's careful starching and pressing. He looks respectable, professional, ready for his day. The mistress comes down in a clean chemise under her dress, comfortable against her skin, soft and smooth. All of this is thanks to the maid's labour. But no one remarks on it. Clean laundry is expected. It's normal. It's simply the way things are in a well-run household. The maid doesn't expect thanks, nor would she receive it. This is her job. This is what she does. Week after week, year after year. Wash day Monday, iron day Tuesday. The rest of the week filled with cooking, cleaning, and 1,000 other small tasks that keep the household running. And next Sunday evening it will begin again. The gathering of soiled linens, the sorting, the steeping in cold water, the preparation for Monday's wash. The rhythm of it is unchanging, as reliable as the seasons. As long as people wear clothes and sleep in beds and eat at tables, there will be laundry. And in the Victorian era, there will be wash day, with all its labour, all its skill, all its quiet, unacknowledged effort. And so our journey through Victorian wash day comes to an end. We've watched water being carried and heated. We've seen fabrics scrubbed and boiled, rinsed and wrung, hung and dried, pressed and folded. We've spent 2 long days in the company of a housemaid as she performed one of her regular weekly tasks. It was not glamorous work, it was not easy work, but it was necessary work, and it was done with care and skill. The next time you toss clothes into a washing machine or pull warm laundry from a dryer, perhaps you'll think of the Victorian wash day. Perhaps you'll feel a moment of gratitude for the machines and technology that have made this work so much simpler. And perhaps you'll also feel a moment of respect for all the people throughout history who did this work by hand, who spent countless hours ensuring that their households had clean linens, who took pride in white sheets and crisp collars and smooth tablecloths. The work was hard, but it was done. Week after week, year after year, the laundry was washed, and in its own small way, that work sustained households, maintained standards of cleanliness and respectability, and kept the fabric of daily life intact. Thank you for joining us on this quiet journey through the past. May your rest be peaceful, your sleep deep, and your dreams untroubled. Good night.